Good morning or good afternoon, depending where you are. I am Joslyn Osborn, Global Practice Director with VACO, and I'm coming to you from sunny Los Angeles. Happy Women's History Month to all. I am very excited to welcome you to Career Confidential. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with VP of Client Services, Brendan Pon. Brendan is coming to us live all the way from Toronto. Welcome to the show, Brendan.
Hello, everyone. Hey, Joslyn. Thanks for having me.
I'm super happy to be here with you. Happy St. Patrick's Day, too. Got my green on here in the U.S. And Brendan and I are going to spend the next few minutes sharing tips and trends for job seekers in the accounting and finance industry. Our goal is to give you all a better understanding of what companies are looking for and the skills that you need to make your resume stand out amongst other candidates. Before we get started, I want to remind everybody that we would love to take your questions. We want to make this relevant for you, so please feel free to drop your questions in the chat and we will happily field those. And Brendan, before I kick over to you for the first question, do you mind just introducing yourself to the viewers?
Sure. So my name is Brendan Pon. I'm a VP Client Services here at VACO Lanik in Toronto. VACO Lanik is the largest finance and staffing firm here in the GTA. And my team and I specialize in connecting finance and accounting professionals with top employers here in the city. I've been here for just over 7 years. And prior to my life in recruitment, I was an accountant doing the whole debit credit scene, like a lot of the candidates that we work with. The past 7 years, though, has been fantastic. And I'm certainly looking forward to another 7 years here in recruitment.
Awesome. I love that you've walked in the shoes of our accounting and finance professionals who are trying to stand out, and you've helped them do it for 7 years. So this is going to be a very good conversation. Thank you for lending us your brain today. So I'd like to start out by asking you, what are the overall trends in accounting and finance that you're currently seeing in Toronto?
Right. I'm sure everyone's heard that the market in general is super hot, and that applies to Toronto as well. We're no different. We're currently in the most dynamic, fast-moving market that we've seen as an office in 35 years. And there are a couple factors that are contributing to that just overall craziness. We're seeing job creation very high, and we're also seeing ease of interviewing is incredibly easy to interview these days, right? You know, rewind 2.5 years ago, you have to take a half-day drive to physically go do an interview. But now you can do 3 interviews back to back in your basement on your laptop, right? So there's just a ton of opportunity, and these as a result of these factors, you know, these candidates have so much opportunity. They're interviewing for multiple roles simultaneously, and what it ultimately leads to is candidates entertaining more than one job offer at the same time, right? And what that means on the flip side for our clients is that, you know, if you are a hiring manager or a hiring organization, you have to expect to run a quick, condensed interview process. We're seeing that if you want to land a good candidate, you have to be quick. You also have to be very decisive. right? You're not going to see 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 candidates anymore. You're going to see a few really good candidates, make up your mind on those. And at the end of the day, candidates are getting more money.
Well, that can be good for the pocketbook, for sure. Hard on the hiring managers if they're hiring in bulk, but that's good news. Are there certain top skills that you're seeing people are looking for accounting and finance professionals?
There certainly are many skills that are important, but what I think is something that's coming up a lot, especially, it's industry agnostic and role agnostic, right? Could be from junior level to senior level roles in any industry, is the experience working with, database management tools or something IT related. As an accountant, having that skill set is super important these days. And the reason is because as organizations are gathering just so much data from their customers, competitors, just market data, they really rely on finance teams to leverage that information and make it readable, and to ultimately turn it into something very valuable. So having that experience with working with large amounts of data and creating something that's readable, and being able to tell a story from it, that's certainly a top skill that I'm noticing. And actually further to that is just the ability to effectively communicate and having strong interpersonal skills. I can name you 0 hiring managers who told me that that is not an important skill. So, I put it a weird way there, but it's important that you're able to, be able to communicate, to build relationships with the business partners, be able to communicate your financial results, be able to really influence, right? Because that's a lot of the times what finance departments are being asked to do these days.
Yeah, once you can interpret the data, but how do you tell the story of the data, taking it even a step further? So that makes sense.
Right.
Which can be hard because not everybody is like you and chose to go into client service when leaving the accounting field. So it's kind of getting that practice and stepping out of your comfort zone a little bit. I think if you don't mind, can we talk about how you prep candidates for interviews? So how does someone flex that muscle and get comfortable with telling the story of themselves?
For sure. Prepping candidates for interviews is a significant part of my job. I do that for many hours a day. And the reason is because interviewing is so important, right? You work hard to secure an interview. We work hard on behalf of our candidates to secure them an interview. So we want to make sure that 60 minutes is, really, a value add and putting your best foot forward. So when I do a prep with a candidate, I'm already expecting them to come in with, high level information about the role, the company, who they're meeting with, because we send them some previously sort of like standard questions to prepare for. But when I'm actually doing a live prep with a candidate, I'm sharing my insight into the hiring manager's style. Are they very rigid with their questions, or are they very, let's just chat, get to know each other? But I think something that is very underrated is what we call on our end, like role playing, right? Actually going through the motions of listening to a question and then, responding to it. Because just like, let's say an athlete, their basketball players are practicing their dribbling every day, or hockey players doing their stick handling. It's just that exercise and that repetitive motions to just get used to in an interview setting is important. So if you imagine, like, if we're doing an interview and an interviewer asks you a question, you're not reading off a screen and thinking about your answer. You are vocalizing it. And when I do a prep with the candidate, I'll say to the candidate, okay, so pretend I'm the interviewer and you're yourself, and tell me, what is your motivation for considering this role? And I'll just ask the candidate to respond. I'll listen to it, and then we'll sort of pause and discuss feedback just from there. So role playing is huge. Yeah.
That's great too, because it sounds like you're giving them a little bit of insight into the particular client's personality and what the key things they're looking for are in the job description beyond maybe just the bullet points on the job description. So I think that's the benefit of partnering with the recruiter during your search, is you get that support and assistance. Right. I've heard, I guess I have tried it sometimes just to listen myself hear myself back, which can be uncomfortable, but I've heard
so
the advice.
uncomfortable.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I've heard the advice: record a simple question that you might often get, such as, tell me about yourself. Record it on your phone, listen back. Did you say a lot? Was it too long? Is there something that wasn't very accomplishment driven that you want to add back in? So
Mhm.
that could be one way to step out of the comfort zone too and get practice on some of the common questions.
For sure. But yeah, like you said, working with us or your recruiter, that is our job to set you up for success. And we have a lot of background information on our clients and past history working with them. So definitely, take advantage of that time with your recruiter to practice and to set yourself up for some success.
I love that.
Yeah.
What do you, going back to kind of the top skills and what hiring managers are looking for, what do you think, in your opinion, is more valuable? Do you see having the CPA designation, or is it just hands-on experience?
Can I say both?
Yeah,
Can
sure.
I say both? I, I truly believe, at least in our market, Jocelyn, up in Toronto, that if you want to have a long career in a career that is climbing the corporate ladder, a CPA is a prerequisite. So you really won't find a role at a senior accountant level and above that doesn't look for a CPA as a minimum. But further to that, of course, having relevant skill set is also super important. If the role is IFRS technical accounting position and you are an internal auditor, there's not a natural alignment, right? So you have to have relevant skill sets. You have to have recent skill sets as well, and that really comes down to ensuring that you understand what options are available for you and pursuing those. So my answer is both.
Okay.
Yeah,
And we're working toward it, right? So we're all
yeah,
starting out somewhere. And this is actually an audience question: is when we
hmm
have our education, but we don't yet have our experience,
hmm
how can we go about breaking in, getting that first opportunity? Or are there things that we can do concurrent to our education or immediately following to help build that experience?
for sure. It is definitely tough to crack into the market, especially the full-time permanent market. A lot of times we see candidates, directly from, say, a university with a Bachelor of Commerce who are, looking to enter and have a long career in finance or accounting. They have to start with a temp role that perhaps is focused on one segment of the balance sheet or the income statement, like AR, for example, or just some sort of more transactional role. As long as you're doing that and performing really, really well, coming into work every day with positive attitude, looking for more to do, how can I continue to learn, do my job really well, but continue to learn. That is how you start. And networking is also super important. Partnering with a recruiter as well to just give you more visibility to the market, putting yourself out there, and that is all very, very important. And I think a candidate who's motivated to do well, who can speak really great to their experience and just to themselves, and holds themselves in very high regard, like those candidates are going to go well, even if you have zero experience. You just got to gotta go through the motions though to start.
Put yourself out there.
Yeah,
And is the temporary work that you mentioned, is that something that Vaco and Vaco Atlantic can assist with?
for sure. We have a specialized team that works exactly with that type of profile, who is either looking to get experience in this market or looking to get experience in general. We have a division, and I'm pretty sure all VACO offices have their dedicated staffing divisions for those types of candidates who are looking for temp work or temp to perm. That's definitely the entry point into just a long finance career.
That's awesome. Got to start somewhere, just get your foot in the door,
Mhm.
and then you can show that you're a hard worker. Um, are internships common in the Toronto and Canada, or less common than in the US?
Well, I'm not too sure how common they are in the U.S., but
Okay.
they're common here for sure,
Okay.
especially doing them in between, I guess, third and fourth year of university.
Okay.
That's probably when it would happen. But as much or any experience you can get is going to help at that level.
Okay. I've also heard people say volunteer, if you can
Hmm
volunteer in the accounting or finance space, helping out perhaps with a nonprofit organization, volunteer-based organization. So different ways to build that experience. Um, I think it's kind of been woven into the conversation, Brendan, but what kind of wrapping a nice bow around it, I'd like to talk about just really succinctly, how can accounting and finance candidates stand out? So if someone's reviewing 10 profiles, how can you stand out up front? And then once you're in front of the client as well.
Right, because it is truly that two-step process, right? Your CV speaks for you first, and then you speak for yourself in an interview. So on the first stage, having a well-formatted resume, it sounds very basic, but you have to have a well-formatted, easy to look at resume, because if a hiring manager is reviewing 10 at once, and there's an issue just on how one looks, perhaps they're inconsistent margins, etc. Again, very preliminary, but very important. And having good tenure in your current and previous roles as well, not moving around too much and having a choppy resume, super important just from a initial glance at our CV by a hiring manager. And the last point on that one is working with a recruiter, right? To be able to meet with you and advocate for you to their clients. This candidate is great. I've met with them. Their resume may need a little bit of work because they're a junior candidate, but meet with them. So I would say that is a good first place to start. And then when you actually do get the interview, looping back to what we've already said, interview skills are so important because this is your chance, right? You've been selected for an interview, and a candidate who, let's say, checks off every single box of a job description, but goes into the interview and bombs it and is low energy, they're not going to get the job, right? But if a candidate comes in and they have a good amount of experience, relevant experience, but maybe they're missing some parts, but they present very well. They're confident, they're very enthusiastic about the opportunity, and they just have good energy. That person's gonna not only get the job, but they're gonna excel in it, and probably gonna be a very good hire. So definitely, work on interview skills with your recruiter, work on interview skills via role play, like I mentioned earlier, work on the resume, make sure it's well formatted. All these things can really set you apart.
I love that. I think people underestimate the value of selling yourself and expressing your interest in the opportunity too, and kind of closing with what you think you can bring to the table. Something too that resonated there is one of Vaco's core tenets is stay coachable. So it's know what you know and know what you don't know. I just
100%.
had someone do poorly in an interview because the client borderline felt like they were almost lying about their experience, because I think what they were trying to convey was they could figure it out, they could do it, but they didn't communicate that correctly. So while I've never done X, here's how I would theoretically know it from my class, and here's how I would go about figuring it out. So
exactly.
Know what you know what you don't know too.
Take ownership of it, right? Exactly. And you don't want to sugarcoat anything. You want to be very honest in an interview. Because once you start going off on a tangent and sort of grasping at straws, like it shows. So know what you know what you don't know. You said it perfectly.
Also, you have to show up and do the job. So if they think you're an expert in Excel and then you aren't, it's going to be a deficit. That is actually a good question too on the honesty. What do you have any advice? Let's say I have a gap on my resume. Perhaps I was dealing with a family illness or whatever it may be. How do you recommend that people represent that as they're going through their job search process?
Right. Well, that's a great question. It's happening very often these days, and for a variety of reasons, right? Like you mentioned, sick leave, mat leave, parental leave, just a sabbatical. You need a break, right? Like they are happening often, and there's certainly a negative stigma towards it. But I read a recent LinkedIn publication on this topic, and it said about 70% of job seekers think that is a negative to have a career gap. But the reality is about 82% of hiring managers would seriously consider and end up hiring a candidate with a gap, right? So it's kind of counterintuitive the way that a lot of people are thinking about it. And also LinkedIn is now putting in a feature where they're allowing you to state on your LinkedIn experience page that you're on a sabbatical. Before, it was very difficult to note what you've been doing for that gap, but they're legitimate. You know that word I'm trying to say.
Legitimizing? Is that a word?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I obviously am not an English major, but I think you just be honest with it, right? You own that gap. You bring it to the attention of your recruiter who's speaking for you, or you just speak to it well, and you don't have to be ashamed of it in this market. And you just, life comes first, and
Yep.
you've got to just take it in stride.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think, turning a negative into a positive with the global pandemic that we just experienced, I think perhaps one of those positives is people are more understanding that life does come first, because we've all just gone through something very life altering. So I will take that as a takeaway. And perhaps to lead with references. I'll be providing my prior controller and assistant controller as my references. That could be something. And yeah, I love it. Honesty is the best policy. Is there anything else, kind of key takeaways, that you would want to wrap up with today for those who are tuning in as they go forward in their job search from here?
I would say there's a lot of opportunity out there. Don't be discouraged, because it always has been, and it always will be a numbers game when you are applying for roles. Like you're rarely going to apply to one role, get that interview, and get that job. It's likely going to be a funnel of many applications, a few interviews, and hopefully one or two offers. So don't be discouraged. Definitely partner with your local VACO office, of course, to help you out with how to structure your resume, how to just learn about the market, and how to best sell yourself. There's a lot of opportunity out there, and we're certainly here to help. And I think there's a lot of great years of debits and credits ahead of y'all.
Unless you decide to come work for us, right? There's always that option too.
Well, since you mentioned it, we are definitely hiring. So
yes,
LinkedIn note, yes.
What do you think is just the people who really like being client facing or candidate facing too, right? Helping advise the candidates, almost like a career coach.
Definitely. I consider myself that on a daily basis. So certainly if you are an accountant and you are looking to transition out, VACO as a whole organization is a fantastic place to work. I'll just put that in there, and get in touch with one of us. We'll have a chat with you about what a career on this side looks like.
I love that. And something you mentioned too, and that funnel is such a good representation of it. You mentioned you might get two offers. So I think something else that's important to remember when partnering with the recruiter is we can help advise you and coach and guide you on what's going to be the offer that most closely aligns with your goals. So that's something else that is a value add with partnering with VACO.
Well said.
Yep. Well, thank you, Brendan, for being here. This was extremely helpful. I appreciate you sharing the valuable insight with our viewers. You mentioned get in touch with us. If our viewers would like to follow up with you, or have further questions or want to work with you, where can they find you? How can we find you?
Do you want my address? I'm just kidding. No, don't come to my door. No, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. That's the best place. LinkedIn is such a powerful community. Let's connect and keep in touch on that way, on that platform.
Perfect. Yeah. Perfect. Well, I had fun. Happy St. Patrick's Day, all. Thanks everyone for watching. And please remember, no matter what stage of your career you're at, VACO is with you all the way.
That's great.
Thank you, Brendan. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Bye-bye, everyone.